Welcome to PushMowerRepair.com. Today we're going to talk about how to service and replace some of the parts in a G4 carburetor for a Victa mower. So the parts that you'll need for this job are a flathead screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, and we've got a servicing kit for this carburetor available on the website. These are some of the parts that might be missing or you might need to replace. So just like most other jobs, first thing we need to do is turn off the fuel, remove the fuel line, and then take off the 3 screws holding on the cover. Don't forget to remove the pull start cord, otherwise it'll get stuck. So now that we've got the cover off, we can see the carburetor right here. First thing we need to do is remove this front cover and check its condition, see if there are any parts that need to be replaced. In order to remove it, you just have to undo this front screw with your flathead screwdriver. Make sure you don't lose any parts as we disassemble the carburetor. So that's the inside there, as you can see. There are several parts. There's the float, there's a jet in there, then you've also got your seal. So things to look out for is in the screw that holds the front on, there's a tiny hole through it, which is where the petrol flows, so you need to make sure that that's clean. Also with the float, make sure that there's no cracks, otherwise it's not going to do its job properly. Be careful of this jet that I mentioned before, as it's really small. I can't tell you how many of these I've lost. It's important that you keep an eye on that. So it goes in to this furthest hole with the pointy side down. And then the seal, just make sure that's in good condition. Make sure it's not flattened or torn at all. And with this front cover, we're just going to remove the gunk on the side there to ensure that there's the best seal possible. Just remember to give the front of the carb a clean as well. There can be bits of dirt and things that get in there, so make sure you have a look at that. So now that we've checked the condition of everything, it's all looking good, you can reassemble the front section. Just put the seal back on, push it down properly to make sure it's sitting correctly. Then make sure that the jet's in the correct position. Put the float in front of it, just hooks on there. Then you want to put the front back on. Make sure that the float's sitting at the bottom and that the pump is on the right side. Otherwise petrol can leak out. Then you just put the screw in the front and tighten it. Okay. Now that we've checked the front of the carby, what's left for us to do is to detach it from the engine and have a look at this main section. So to remove it from the engine, first you need to twist it and then pull it backwards and it'll just slide off like so. Now that we've removed the carby from the engine, we need to unplug these hoses. First one is the decompressor hose, so just unplug that, just pull it off. It can be a bit tricky. There we go. Then we need to remove the breather hose from the engine at the back. With both of those hoses unplugged, the only thing holding the carburetor to the engine is these ignition cables. So to remove them, first pull out this black cable which is at the top, and then pull back on the red and it will disconnect. Now that we've removed the carby completely and disconnected everything holding it in, we need to dismantle it by removing this top cap. Just put your flathead screwdriver in this gap here, twist it, and the top will pop off. Nice and easy. You'll notice that there's this spring here. There's plenty of parts in here, make sure you don't lose them. First of all, there's that big spring, then there's a metal plate. So remove this, push it forward, there's a bigger hole that'll move onto the top of the jet and then it'll pop off. Then there's this rubber seal, just pull up on that to remove it. And be careful because there's a smaller spring underneath that you don't want to move, that you don't want to lose. There's also another plastic piece that's important to its correct operation. So we've just got a good comparison of things that you want to look for when you're opening up your carby. Here's a diaphragm that looks like it's had some rough days. This is what it should look like. Be nice and soft, hold its position well. As you can see, the lip on it is just mangled. Also, the springs in the carburetor are important. These are what they should look like. These are what they should not look like. Then finally, there's this metal piece that holds the diaphragm in place. This would be a normal looking piece. And this is what happens if you have rats in your carburetor. Now that we've removed all those parts from the carburetor, what we can have a look at is the throttle cable. Now the throttle cable attaches to the main body of the carburetor by this metal ball, which you can see, it's gold there. So when we change the position of the throttle, it should move this. So we'll just check that's working. There you go. So from that you can see that it's functioning correctly. While everything's off, we'll give it a clean and then we'll reassemble it. To reassemble the carburetor, first piece that you want to put in is the jet. That goes into the bottom of the carburetor. There's a hole there for it to slot into. Can be tricky to get it in there. Make sure that you hold it up from the bottom the entire time, otherwise it'll slide back down. You need to clip parts into it. Next piece is this one, which fortunately for us tells us which side to put down. So put that down. You might see the slots, there's 3 of them around the carburetor. The prongs here should slot into those. Slide down nicely like that. The next piece to put in is the smaller spring. Just sits around the middle. Then we need to put this piece back on. Now it's important to make sure that this is in good condition, because what we've found is that that's the main culprit in causing the carburetor not to work. So make sure that it's nice and soft, that it's not hard or cracked. If you do need a replacement part, like we showed before, there is a servicing kit available from the website. Make sure that you put it with the Victa branding facing down, and then just push it onto the top of the jet. So if this seal here sits nice and flush, like it is, then that's how you can know that it's in good condition. If these sides are folding in and they won't sit nicely, then that's something that you can look at and recognize that it needs to be changed. Once that's in, put this metal plate back on. Just slide it underneath the top part of the jet. And finally, this larger spring needs to sit in the middle. And the top cap goes back on. Might be easier to put the spring in the top. Then all you need to do is push the top on, it'll clip on, like so. Make sure that this hose is facing back away from the front of the carburetor, so it plugs into the engine nice and easily. So now that we've reconditioned all the carby, made sure all the parts inside are working, we need to re-plug it back into the engine. The first thing to do when we're plugging it back into the engine is to connect the ignition cables, as they are really the most fiddly. One thing to look at before you start doing that is this red cable right here. On the end it should have a rubber piece. This is a great example of one that's been absolutely destroyed. That's not good because it means that these cables aren't going to work properly and the mower won't run. We've got this new rubber piece, you just slot that on the end and that should fix any problems occurring there. And push the red cable into this hole at the back of the carburetor. Then you need to slide this rubber cover over the top of this plastic piece at the end. What you need to be careful of is that there's a hole in the piece there. There's a hole through this rubber cover. These need to line up because this black cable then slots through those two holes. So now that that's all lined up, push the cable through. It can be a bit fiddly, so just keep playing around with it till you got it working. Make sure that when you connect this black cable that it goes right down as far as this one has. You'll feel when it connects properly it pushes down. Now reconnect both of the hoses. And clip the carburetor back in. Have it on an angle first, push it in, and then twist it back. Now the carburetor is reconnected, get the pull cord, put it back through the cover, and then place the cover down and do up each of the screws to tighten it. Now finally, reconnect the fuel hose and turn the fuel on.